Darkness had fallen. A blanket of fog obscured the moon. Three friends, Emily, Ben, and Chris, arrived at the old Victorian house. Its silhouette loomed against the stormy sky. A shiver ran down Emily's spine. The house felt cold, unwelcoming. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ben, ever the optimist, chuckled. "Don't worry, Em, it's just an old house." Chris, silent and observant, scanned the house, his eyes lingering on the boarded-up windows. They unloaded the car, their laughter echoing unnaturally in the stillness. Each gust of wind seemed to whisper a warning, unheard, but felt. As they stepped onto the porch, the floorboards groaned beneath their weight, as if sighing with the weight of forgotten memories. The front door creaked open, revealing a darkness deeper than the night itself. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of dampness and decay. The house had been abandoned for years, left to the mercy of time and the elements. Every step they took stirred up clouds of dust, making the air even more oppressive. Cobwebs clung to every surface and dust lay thick on the floor. It was as if the house itself was trying to keep them out, to protect its secrets from prying eyes. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the creaking of the old wooden floors beneath their feet. Emily felt a prickle on the back of her neck, a sense of being watched. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone, that the house was aware of their presence. Her eyes darted around, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever might be lurking in the shadows. Ben, ever practical, flicked on a light switch. The click echoed through the empty halls, but nothing happened. The darkness remained unbroken, as if the house itself refused to be illuminated. Nothing. "Power's out," he muttered. "I'll check the basement." His voice was steady, but there was a hint of unease in his eyes. He didn't like the idea of going down there alone, but he didn't want to show his fear. Chris produced a flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. The light was weak, barely enough to pierce the thick darkness that seemed to swallow everything. He moved it slowly, methodically, trying to make out the shapes in the room. He swept it across the room, revealing faded grandeur and encroaching decay. The furniture, once elegant and luxurious, was now covered in dust and mold. The walls adorned with peeling wallpaper told stories of a time long past. Emily hugged her arms around herself, trying to ward off the growing chill. The cold seemed to seep into her bones, making her shiver uncontrollably. She felt a sense of dread, as if something terrible was about to happen. They explored the house, each room a mirror of the last empty, echoing, filled with whispers of the past. The walls seemed to close in on them, the shadows growing longer and more menacing. Every creak and groan of the old house made their hearts race. A sudden bang from upstairs made Emily jump. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked up, trying to see what had caused the noise. The sound echoed through the house, making it seem even more ominous. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice tight with fear. She clutched at Ben's arm, her eyes wide with terror. She didn't want to go any further, but she knew they had to find out what was going on. Ben frowned, probably just the wind. He tried to sound confident, but there was a tremor in his voice. He didn't believe his own words, but he didn't want to scare Emily any more than she already was. But even he sounded unsure. The house seemed to be playing tricks on them, making them doubt their own senses. They had to stay strong, to keep their wits about them if they were going to uncover the secrets hidden within these walls. The attic stairs creaked ominously as they ascended, each step echoing through the silent house. The sound was almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat, growing louder and more insistent with every step. It was as if the house itself was alive, warning them to turn back. But curiosity, or perhaps something more, drove them onward. The air grew colder, heavy with a palpable sense of dread. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, making you shiver uncontrollably. The misty atmosphere added to the eerie setting, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Every breath they took was visible, a ghostly reminder of the chill that surrounded them. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light from Chris's flashlight, creating an almost magical yet unsettling scene. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the forgotten remnants of the past. Old furniture, covered in white sheets, loomed like specters in the shadows. The air was thick with dust, each particle a tiny fragment of history. Emily felt a growing unease, a feeling that they were not alone. Her eyes darted around the room, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was causing the hairs on the back of her neck to stand on end. It was an instinctive fear, one that told her to run, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. She could almost hear whispers, just out of earshot, adding to her anxiety. A child's doll lay discarded in the center of the room, its porcelain face cracked, a malevolent sneer etched upon its features. The doll seemed to be watching them, its eyes following their every move. It was as if the doll held the secrets of the attic, waiting for someone to uncover them. The sight of it sent a chill down Emily's spine, making her take a step back. Emily shuddered, an instinctive fear gripping her heart. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ward off the cold and the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Her mind raced with thoughts of what could be lurking in the shadows, unseen but ever present. She felt a presence, something watching, waiting. She could hear her own pulse pounding in her ears, a steady drumbeat that matched the creaking of the floorboards. Each thud of her heart seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying her fear. She glanced at her friends, hoping to find some reassurance, but their faces mirrored her own terror. They were all feeling it, the oppressive weight of the attic's secret. "This place is creepy," Ben admitted, his usual cheerfulness gone. His voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would awaken something best left undisturbed. He tried to put on a brave face, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. They all felt it, the sense that they were intruding on something ancient and powerful. Chris was examining a dusty trunk, his brow furrowed in concentration. The trunk was old, its leather cracked and worn, the metal clasps rusted with age. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, a relic of a bygone era. Chris's curiosity got the better of him, and he knelt down to open it, his fingers trembling slightly as he undid the clasps. He lifted the lid slowly, revealing a pile of old photographs and yellowed letters. The photographs were black and white, capturing moments frozen in time. The letters were tied with a faded ribbon, their edges frayed and brittle. Chris picked up one of the photographs, squinting to make out the faces. They seemed familiar, yet distant, like a memory just out of reach. As he reached for a photograph, a cold gust of wind slammed the trunk shut, extinguishing his flashlight and plunging them into darkness. The suddenness of it took their breath away, leaving them in pitch black. The only sound was their own breathing, rapid and shallow, as they tried to make sense of what had just happened. The attic's secret remained hidden, but its presence was undeniable. A scream escaped Emily's lips. Panic welled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. Chris fumbled for his flashlight, his hand shaking. The beam flickered back to life, illuminating a scene that sent shivers down their spines. Standing at the top of the stairs was a figure shrouded in shadow. Its eyes glowed with an unearthly light, piercing the darkness. Emily could feel its gaze upon her, cold and malevolent. "Who's there?" Ben's voice was shaky, fear lacing his words. The figure didn't move, its glowing eyes fixed on them. Emily felt a scream rising in her throat, but no sound came out. They were trapped, caught in a nightmare from which there seemed no escape. Section 5. The Darkest Hour. The figure glided towards them, its feet not seeming to touch the ground. Terror lent speed to their movements as they scrambled back, stumbling over discarded toys and forgotten memories. Emily could feel the icy breath of the apparition on her neck, smelled the decay of the grave. They fled the attic, the figure in relentless pursuit. Down the creaking stairs they ran, each step echoing their terror. The house seemed to press in on them, the walls closing in, the shadows deepening. They were lost in a labyrinth of their own fear. Section 6. Fleeing into the storm. Bursting out of the house and into the storm, they didn't dare slow down. Rain lashed at their faces, the wind whipping their hair. Lightning illuminated the house, momentarily revealing the figure silhouetted in the doorway, its eyes burning with unholy fire. Emily's lungs burned, her legs screaming for respite. But the terror of the house, the chilling memory of the figure, spurred them onwards. They ran until they could run no more, collapsing on the muddy ground, gasping for breath. Section 7. No escape from terror. Huddled together for warmth and comfort, they looked back at the house. It stood silhouetted against the raging storm, a monolith of darkness. Even from this distance, Emily could feel its malevolence, its cold, watchful presence. They were not safe. The realization struck them like a physical blow. The house, the figure, it was all connected to them now. There was no escaping the terror that clung to them like a shroud. Section 8. A Final Confrontation. "We have to go back," Chris said, his voice low and urgent. Emily and Ben stared at him, their faces etched with fear and confusion. "What?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to face it," Chris insisted. "We can't run forever." Steeling themselves, they returned to the house. The storm had subsided, leaving behind an eerie calm. They stepped inside, the air thick with anticipation. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Section 9. Forever Haunted. The figure stood in the hallway, its eyes burning into their souls. It was as if the very essence of fear had taken a tangible form, manifesting in the dark corners of the house. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Each step they took echoed through the empty halls, a reminder of the countless souls that had walked these paths before them. There was no fear now, only a chilling acceptance. The initial terror had given way to a resigned understanding. They knew that escape was impossible, that the house had claimed them as its own. The walls seemed to close in around them, whispering secrets of the past, tales of sorrow and despair that had seeped into the very fabric of the building. This was their fate, their curse. Bound to the house, they felt the weight of its history pressing down on them. Every room held a story, every shadow a memory. The house was alive with the echoes of those who had come before, and now, they were part of that eternal chorus. The figure reached out, its touch icy cold, and in that instant, Emily understood. She felt a connection, a bond that transcended time and space. The cold seeped into her bones, but with it came a flood of memories, not just her own, but those of the countless souls who had been trapped here. She saw their faces, heard their voices, and felt their pain. They were not the first to be drawn to this house, and they would not be the last. The house had a way of calling to those who were lost, those who were searching for something they couldn't quite name. It promised answers, but only delivered more questions. It was a siren's call, impossible to resist. The figure dissolved into motes of light, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of cold air. It was as if the very essence of the house had momentarily taken form, only to vanish into the ether. The light danced in the air, a fleeting reminder of the presence that had just been there. The house was silent, the terror gone, but the silence was not comforting. It was the silence of a predator waiting to strike. The rooms, once filled with the sounds of life, now stood empty, but they were far from lifeless. The house was waiting, always waiting. But the memory lingered, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface of the world, waiting to claim its next victims. The house was a gateway, a portal to a realm of shadows and whispers. It was a place where the past and present collided, where the living and the dead coexisted in a fragile balance. They left the house, their lives forever changed. The experience had marked them, leaving an indelible impression on their souls. They carried with them the weight of the house's history, the stories of those who had come before, and the knowledge that they had been part of something much larger than themselves. They carried the whispers of fear with them, a haunting reminder of the night they spent in the belly of the beast. The memories would fade, but the impact would remain. They had faced the darkness and emerged, but they would never be the same. The house had taken a part of them, and in return it had given them a glimpse into the unknown.